Close your eyes and imagine. What if the things in life that cause us the greatest pain, the things that bring us grief, are challenges? Challenges designed to help us grow, to ultimately become what we were always meant to be. We feel like we've been buried, but what if, like a seed, we've been planted? And having been planted, we grow to become a mighty tree. Now, open your eyes. Open your eyes to this way of viewing life. Come with me as we explore your true, infinite, eternal nature. This is Grief to Growth, and I am your host, Brian Smith. Hey there, welcome to Grief to Growth, where we explore life's most profound questions to help you navigate through its toughest challenges. Whether you're a longtime listener or you're tuning in for the first time, I'm glad to have you with us. My name is Brian Smith, and my mission is to delve into who we are, where we came from, why we're here, and where we're going. Today, we have a special guest who embodies this journey in his work and his writing. His name is James Parker. He's a distinguished staff writer at The Atlantic and is the author of the compelling new book, Get Me Through the Next 5 Minutes, Odes to Being Alive. James is known for his profound explorations of human experience, vividly captured in his acclaimed biography of punk rock performer Henry Rollins, and it's called Turned On. His writing has garnered numerous accolades, including New England Newspapers and Press Association Awards, an ASCAP Deems Taylor Award for Music Criticism, and a National Magazine Award nomination. In his latest book that we're going to discuss today, James offers a unique collection of odes that reflect on the raw and real experiences of life. These are not just literary works, but they're practical guides to appreciating and navigating our existence, which is what we're all about here at Grief to Growth. From the confusing and despairing times of his mid-20s to the present day, James shares insights aimed at helping us enjoy life a little bit more. In today's episode, we're going to explore questions like, why did James write this book? What are the ways to enjoy life that he advocates? And how do odes serve as tools for digging into reality and celebrating it? We'll also dive into some of the book's more eclectic topics, and there are some very eclectic topics, such as the importance of managing our nervous system, the significance of Bourne as an Jason Bourne as an action hero, and even an ode to constipation. James' journey is one of self-reflection and sharing learned wisdom, making him the perfect guest for our show. So as always, after the podcast, join us at grieftogrowth.com/community to carry on the conversation. And with that, I'd like to welcome to Grief to Growth, James Parker.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me. Very, very pleased to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation today. We started talking a little bit before we got started. We just kind of jumped right in.
Yeah.
Before we get into other things, you used the word odes. It's not a word that we use very often. So what is an ode?
An ode, well, I tend to do everything backwards. So I wrote a lot of them before I actually researched what they are. But when I did finally research what they are, I discovered that Pindar in ancient Greece, the poet, he's generally credited with the invention of the ode. And what he would do is he would write these poems in celebration of great athletes and great feats and great sporting achievements. And that's kind of the origin of the ode. It's a way of celebrating something. And people have used it in many different ways. You know, Keats's Ode to a Nightingale is very famous. You'd have a hard time describing that as a celebration, but it's a very profound investigation of a state of mind, a state of being.
Mm-hmm.
Pablo Neruda, the Chilean poet, he's one of my models because he was incredibly sort of voracious and omnivorous and random seeming in the subjects he picked for his odes. You know, ode to fish soup, ode to lost socks, ode to newspapers, whatever it is, whatever he was feeling. So basically, for me, I'm probably answering like four questions at once here, or none at all. But basically, they serve for me as just a way of getting into it, a way of focusing, a way of using the gifts that writing gives me, which is the gift of attention and the gift of the detail, and just kind of getting into it.
Yeah, I think I love it. I love the way you take and these things that we consider mundane or routine, and you really observe them and really get into them, and kind of it's kind of a mindfulness practice almost, and say, let's think about these little things that we often overlook. Now, the title of the book, Get Me Through the Next 5 Minutes, really jumped out at me because, as I was telling you earlier, I deal with a lot of people that are in grief. And a
Yeah.
lot of times we're in that intense part of grief. We're like, we can't even think about the next 5 years or
Yeah.
five
Yeah.
days even. We're like, get me through the next 5 minutes. What
Yeah.
does that mean to you? Get me through the next 5 minutes.
Well, as you were saying that, Brian, I was like, I time traveled back to sitting in front of a doctor when I was 23, 24, and he was the family doctor. um and I just, I'd been having panic attacks, but back then, this is like early 90s, people didn't even say panic attack. You just I mean, nobody knew what to say about it. but I
Right.
but I thought I was going nuts, basically. And I was trying to explain that to this doctor who'd known me since I was a kid, but he was not a particularly imaginative man. And he said, "Well, do you have a like a career path? Have you considered?" He literally said, "Have you considered accountancy?" Like that was that that
That's,
was
that's
that
there's
was
there's the
that was the
answer.
remedy. Do you know what I mean? That's good. And then I said, I don't think that's going to do it. And he said, "Well, we've got these tricyclic antidepressants that we can give you. This is pre-Prozac as well. Um, Tricyclic antidepressants, and they take a couple of weeks to work." And at that moment, I had the exact thing that you're describing. I had, like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to sit around and wait for 2 weeks for these things to work? I can barely take it just just minute to minute.
Hmm.
So I think the urgency of the title comes from that. And it's also to do with gratitude. I mean, I'm very grateful to the artists, the musicians and the poets and the athletes and the actors who have got me through, who keep me excited, who keep me interested, who keep me focused. So it's partly that too. Like, I mean, whoever has got me through the next 5 minutes, I owe them, big time.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's great. So, and you say you write the book to your 25-year-old self, but
Mm,
also to your present self.
mm.
So, what about your 25-year-old self? What would you like for your 25-year-old self to know?
I would like him to know, which I'm sure you go into all the time, which is that, if you hang in there, and you respect your equipment, you respect your perceptual equipment, you respect what you came here with, you don't talk harshly to yourself, you know, and you just sort of, if you can lie back into it, it will sustain you. It doesn't feel like it's going to. It feels like it's like a trust exercise with the universe. You feel like you're going to fall into the abyss, but you actually don't, rather miraculously. Um, but it takes courage and faith and a lot of help, I think, to do that. Um, and I think I'd also say to him, you just look, there's the practical stuff, like, do your pull-ups, take your cold showers, listen to your AC/DC. Like, these are for me, these have been the fixes. And everybody knows what their own fixes are because it's happened in their lives. Your nervous system has responded positively to such and such a stimulus. Go there, if it's healthy, if it's not an addiction, go there.
Hmm.
So, and these are the things that will help you keep going until the deeper healing, over which you have no control. Unfortunately, I don't think. I mean, you can open yourself up to it, but it's going to happen at its own rate,
Hmm.
right? You're the expert, Brian. I mean, am I making sense?
I think you are making sense. Yeah, you have to again kind of allow that to happen, and you
Yeah.
said that trust, and that's what one of the things I love about the book. There's a lot I love about it, but it's for anybody in any phase in life, and I love the way you recognize that. It's like, okay, this is for I because I have a 27-year-old daughter, and I know
Mm.
that generation is struggling with a lot of angst right now.
Oh yeah.
They're really dealing with. I was listening to an interview with Johan Hari this morning,
Oh
and
yeah. Yeah.
he talks about the loneliness problem. So there's that. There's the economy. They feel like, okay, they're almost giving up on life. It's interesting because they're like, well, we're never going to have a house. We're probably not going to have kids.
Yeah.
Let's just basically live the YOLO, right? So it's
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
this, but they need to be taught this thing that you're saying, this lesson from our perspectives. Like, yeah, we felt that way too.
Mm.
That panic that you had in your mid 20s. I think it's pretty common. I did.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think the kids today are dealing with extra stuff, though, honestly. I think there's a level of just environmental ambient anxiety kind of attacking everyone's brain, which I'm not sure it was there when we were kids. I mean, like socially, I felt my surroundings were basically pretty secure, and
Yeah.
that was actually one of the things that kind of made it worse in a weird way. Like, what is wrong with me? Do you know what I mean? Why
Yeah.
why can't I? Why am I not having fun like my friends? Why can't I connect to this to everything?
Yeah, well, it's different and it's the same.
Yes.
I think every generation feels like it's the worst it's ever been.
Quite right. Quite right.
But everything has been turned up a level now.
Yeah, yeah,
With
yeah.
social media and
Yes.
instant 24-hour news, it's just interesting that we're also so connected.
Yeah.
Something that happens in Russia this morning, I hear about now. So there is
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Everything's been turned up a level. So I definitely agree with that. And I think that's why we're seeing this level of angst and the
Yeah.
loneliness
But
problems
you're
that
right. You're right though. It's the same stuff. It's like it immemorially. It's been the same stuff, right? I mean, it's the human. Jeff Dyer, an English writer who I love. He has a book called also known as The Human Condition,
yeah.
because that's it, right? And we all have to come to terms with it at some point in our own way.
Yeah. Well, I was talking with a 26-year-old client the other day who's dealing with, depression and lack of motivation, et cetera. And he was like, I'm really tired of outside circumstances controlling how I respond.
Yeah.
I could take charge of my life right now,
Yeah.
despite outside circumstance. And that's the human condition. We can't
Yeah.
control the things outside. I
Yeah.
mean, your book is about like looking, what can I do?
Yeah.
What can I do? What can I focus on?
What can I focus on, and how deep can I dig into the kind of texture and the granular reality of my life as I'm actually living it now? Um, because I keep quoting writers, but John Updike, he had this beautiful line: "Consciousness is an ecstasy." I mean, that's a beautiful, like, there's something inherent
Mm,
joyful, I think, about, not to say that we always feel it, but just about being alive and
yeah.
being this tremendous field of perception and energy and what's coming at us. I mean, there's inherent kind of ecstasy in that, I think. And of course, we separate ourselves from it in a million different ways. But if you go into your own circumstances, I think you can find it.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I get as the gist of the book, and I hadn't heard that quote before, but I love that because
Nice, isn't it?
it's really a matter of our observations, a matter of our perception. And I read Viktor Frankl's book, many years ago. Is this his
Yeah,
guy's in a concentration camp and he's finding meaning in life.
yeah,
So the thing is, it's digging for it. It's making those observations, and your book takes it, and they're very short
yeah,
chapters, very short odes. And I like that because I think that really suits our society today. You can read them really quickly, but they're so profound, and it shows the profundity of what we consider to be the routine in life.
yeah.
And some of your odes are kind of funny, like ode to constipation.
Yeah. That's very short.
So
That's a very short one.
yeah. So let's talk about that. That one's going to get people's attention. What is the ode to constipation?
Oh, well, let me read the Ode to Constipation. Hold on. Just so I get it right. It's a tiny little, so some of them are poems and some of them are in prose. This is a very short poem and it doesn't rhyme, which is uncharacteristic for me because I'm obsessive about rhymes. Okay, Ode to Constipation. My cat sticks his head round the bathroom door and regards me with small, humorless cat face. So it's almost like a haiku. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's a little snapshot of a moment which kind of expands outwards. Me sitting there, my cat poking his head around. The expression on his face is like, oh Jesus, you again. You know what I mean? Here you are,
Yeah. Yeah.
again, having this issue, and there's something beautiful about it. I think. I
I
hope.
think I think there is, and that's again, that's that taking the joy in the little moments of life that we just again we so easily overlook. It's like, okay, I have to get from this moment to this moment, and we
Yeah.
we prioritize this moment's important, but this moment isn't.
Yeah.
And the book really draws us into like, okay, where am I, right now? What's happening right now?
Yeah.
When I opened it up, one of the first ones I read was Ode to Giving Money.
Oh, thank
And
you. Yeah.
and I thought that was a great observation, because we all struggle with that, right? You're
Yeah.
walking past a homeless person. Do you
Yeah.
give them money? Do you not give them money?
Yeah.
Are you concerned what they're going to do with it? So
Yeah.
for people that don't know, tell them about that one.
So my take on that, which is not exclusively my take by any means, it comes through, Catholic social doctrine. It comes from the homeless people that I know. Is that if you want to give somebody money, give them money. If you don't want to give them money, don't give them money. But if you do give it, give it. In other words, let it go. Uh, Hand it over without any expectation, without any condition, without any, oh, are you going to spend it on drugs? Blah, 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 blah. Are you going to make yourself totally responsible for this person and look after them? Probably not.
Yeah.
So give them the money. What they have their own business, and after it's left your hands, it's none of your business. So that's basically my and also you really do never know. You never know. They might spend it on drugs. That, as I was saying, they might spend it on a new copy of Moby Dick.
Right.
So and you just don't know, and it's not your business anymore once you've given it.
Time for a real quick break. Make sure you like and subscribe. Liking the video will show it to more people on YouTube, and subscribing will make sure you get access to all my great content in the future. And now back to the video. Yeah, I love that, and that's my philosophy. I remember one time I was actually coming out of a liquor store, and
Yeah,
there's a guy standing there, and he asked me for money to buy beer, and I'm
yeah,
like, who am I to judge what he's going to do with it? Because
well,
if you
exactly.
if you give it, that's no longer yours. It doesn't
That's the
matter what he
point.
does with it.
And also, like to sort of blow out that moment a little bit. If you do give it and you give freely, then I do think you're kind of participating in the larger economy of creation, which is a constant giving of stuff, a constant pouring outward. And if you orient yourself within that, then you're gonna feel pretty good, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, it's kind of that like it's again those little moments can be life lessons for us. And this happened like many years ago, and it's something I've reflected on many times. Because there is that tendency that we have to judge that person.
Yeah,
What are you going to do with it? Why are you here? And I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm buying beer.
yeah, exactly.
I'm walking out of a liquor store. How am I going to judge him?
Yeah, right on, exactly. You know, yeah, who throws the first stone? Exactly. That's it. That's exactly it. Yeah.
So I know you're like you're into poetry as well, and I
Yeah.
I'm really not so much. So what does poetry do for you? What is it that attracts you to that?
Poetry for me, I run uh, a writers group for homeless writers every Tuesday, and what I
Mm,
say to them is poetry is the highest form of journalism. It's like the latest news on reality. Like it's like at the kind of frontiers of perception. For me, that's where poetry exists, and that's why I'm always
mm,
incredibly refreshed and restored uh, by it. Um, and I've also discovered with writers who might not think of themselves as writers with a lot of very raw experience to deal with. Poetry sort of offers itself very immediately as a way of just cracking into what's going on for them. That you can bypass a lot of cliches, a lot of things that happen when you're trying to write prose, and just go straight to the heart of it. So that's basically what it means to me. That's a lovely question.
yeah, well, it's good. I'm glad I asked you that. So you also talk in the book about buzz management,
Ah,
and what is that?
buzz management for me, that's just my term for the whole business of trying to keep your levels sort of decent, like not get too excited by anything, not get too depressed by anything, be excited but not anxious. When I'm a real up and down sort of a dude. I suddenly get very tired. What do I do then? Now I'm all anxious and I've drunk too much coffee. What do I do then? Now I need my booze. Da 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 da. All of that comes under the heading. There are healthy ways to do it and unhealthy ways to do it, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, all of that comes under the heading of buzz management. I mean, exercise, I think, for me has been the best way of doing it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
So
I
what
think
kind of exercise do you enjoy?
I do pull-ups and push-ups and I jump rope outside, always outside.
Mm,
And do some core stuff, pretty basic stuff, but just to be in the air, huffing and puffing, get your blood going. It's had like scientifically proven effects on mood elevation and all that, right? It's good
sure.
for you.
Yeah,
Yeah. And as a
absolutely.
side effect, you get strong, which is nice.
Yeah. Well, I think I know in the book you don't really like it's not prescriptive. It's not like do these five things.
Yeah,
You talk about some of the things that work for you.
exactly.
I think we mentioned earlier, maybe before we started, but you mentioned cold showers. I
Yeah.
tried that. I hate cold showers. It's like torture. But that's something that you found to be very beneficial.
Didn't you feel good afterwards, kind of?
Yeah. I did it for a while, but it's a cost benefit thing, right? I
Yeah, it
I
is.
am a
Exactly.
person. I'm cold by nature.
Yeah.
I don't like being cold. Yeah. So I was like, I tried it for a while. I'm like, yeah, I'll find something else.
Right.
There's a guy, Wim Hof, that
Oh
I would.
yes, yes. I know all
Yeah,
about
I
him.
was like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I would die. I would literally die if I plunge into a frozen lake.
I mean, I've done the Wim Hof, ice baths, and it's quite interesting when when you climb in your brain for 10 seconds, your brain basically screams at you, you are gonna die. You're gonna die in here. And you have to ride that out. I mean, part of it for me is not it's not just the lovely sort of tingly feeling that I get afterwards. It's the sensation of having overcome myself. That's
Right.
the first thing, you know what I mean? I've
You,
had this battle with myself and I've won.
I guess I've made the excuse. It must be a different experience for other people.
Yes,
So
yes,
I'm
of
like,
course.
they must not be feeling what I'm feeling. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it.
Right, yeah. If it doesn't suit you, it doesn't suit you, you know.
Yeah.
I'm sure
Maybe I'll try it again.
you've got other tricks, I'm sure, Brian, right?
Yeah, I do have other things I do, and it's interesting because as I worked with clients, I have general categories of things I recommend to them, like
Yeah,
gratitude, which I think you spoke about earlier, exercise, mindfulness, getting the proper amount of sleep. But it's different for everybody, and it's really interesting because I had a woman that I interviewed after her mother passed away. She was deeply depressed,
yeah,
and people were recommending all kinds of stuff for her. You should go for a walk. You should do yoga. You should do this. Their thing. And she's like, I hated all those things. But what
yeah.
she found was powerlifting. She
Ah,
said, I love powerlifting because it makes me feel strong. It makes me feel accomplished. There's something about counting the reps that was like meditative to her.
yeah,
So
yeah,
her
yeah.
thing was powerlifting.
Nice.
So I say to people, find what works for you.
When you counsel people to orient themselves towards gratitude, like practically, how does that work?
Well, when I'm dealing with people, a lot of times it's in those early stages of grief. So gratitude is like, it's a very lofty concept that
Yeah,
they're going to reject, of course. So
yeah,
what I want to do, I start with a lot of somatic stuff, like, okay, are you full, have you been fed today?
yeah.
Do you have food? Are you warm?
Right.
I do when I wake up in the morning. A lot of times it might be my bed feels really great.
Yeah, yeah.
Just start with those little things that you can appreciate instead of looking at big things.
Right.
And it's a matter of training yourself to start focusing. And again, that's what I love about your book, because it's obvious that you've practiced this. It's obvious that you've practiced mindfulness, because the things that, like, I was reading about, like, our purpose for being here, and you talk
Yeah,
about the Jason Bourne movies.
yeah. Oh yeah,
Now, a lot of times we sit down and watch a movie, we're just like, I'm just here to be entertained. And
yeah,
and it's like, yeah, it was great. He killed the bad guy, blah, blah, blah. And
yeah,
we don't see the bigger thing behind it, the connection to the hero.
yeah.
And talk about that, because I thought it was really interesting, your observations about different types of heroes. And you chose Jason Bourne as kind of like the prototype.
He's the archetype for me. I mean, Tony Gilroy, who wrote the screenplay for the first couple of Bourne movies, he's a genius in my opinion. He did Michael Clayton, the film with George Clooney, which I think is one of the great movies. But the Bourne movies, they obsessed me for a long time before I understood why they obsessed me, and I think it's because why we love Jason Bourne and why we love him, why I certainly love him more than James Bond or Jack Reacher or John Wick, as charismatic as those guys are, is because he's on the essential human mission, which is figuring out who he is and what he's here for. He wakes up, he's a nobody. He has no memory. He's pulled out of the sea, which is a classic mythological thing to figure, plucked from the ocean with no
Mhm.
name. And he's on the fishing boat, and he discovers that he can tie these fancy knots, and then he discovers that he can speak German, and then he discovers that he's an amazing fighter when he tackles these two cops in Zurich. So he realizes that he's been trained, and but then it goes even deeper because what he's actually been trained to do, which is kill people, is not what he wants to do. So he has to go under that too. So it's a very, and that's the dynamic of the movie, him on this journey, you know, trying to find his name, essentially trying to find out who he is and what happened to him.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's why I love Jason Bourne.
Yeah, and I think that for me, from my perspective on life, my perspective is we are spiritual beings that have been placed in these bodies, put on this earth, and
Mm-mm.
essentially forgotten who we are. So I think, and it's interesting when
I
they
wish I
when
wish I knew why that happens though. Why we forget, you know?
yeah, well, I think it's because we like the challenge. I think people like challenges, and when I say this to people, they'll say, "Well, I would never ever choose this life. I would never choose to have these challenges." And then I'll say, "Well, what about people that run marathons? I would never choose to run a marathon,
Yeah,
but people do. And why do they do it? Because they want to be able to say they finished. Why do people climb mountains? When I went to college, my degree is in chemical engineering. That was
yeah,
4 years of torture. It
yeah,
was not easy.
yeah,
And I would think, like, why am I paying them to do this to me? Well, I'm doing it
yeah.
because I want to develop a skill.
Mm.
So as humans, we come here and we face these challenges, and the forgetfulness is what makes it challenging. If we
Right.
could remember who we were, it'd be easy,
It'd be easy.
and we could
I
always just
love that. I
fall.
love that though that we we choose it. We choose it, but as difficult as it might be, and as alien feeling as it might be. Do you know what I mean? Like you might, that was one of my you sort of it wasn't a delusion, it never got to that level, but it was definitely a sort of intuition that I was kind of under attack. I was under attack by alien forces, like it's
Right,
coming at me, like, and it's hostile, and I have to protect my, you get very brittle and you get very small,
right.
like, and very defensive. But yeah, but once you can understand it as something, it's all part of your bloody game in the world. This is why, yeah, that's beautiful, Brian. I love that.
Yeah, I think that's the model that works for me. And again, what I always have to relate each other now, and like you're obsessed with the Jason Bourne character. I'm
Yeah.
obsessed with survival shows. There's a show called Alone.
Oh
Uh,
yes.
I
Yes.
I love Alone,
Yeah.
and I watched that, and I'm like, okay, first of all, there's a lesson like people are not meant to live alone. You can
Yeah.
see very quickly that we cannot live alone. That
Yeah.
we have to live in societies, and it's not just the physical aspect. Some of those people just they withdraw because they go crazy. I
Yeah.
mean, after a week of not talking to anybody, they're like, I have to. They
Yeah.
tap out.
Yeah.
And again, I watched that, and they do have a prize now, but when they first started, I don't think they even had a prize. And I would describe the show to people. They said, "Well, why would people do that if they're not doing it for the money?" I'm like, "They do it for the challenge. They
Yeah.
do it because they say, I want to see if I could do this."
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is the spiritual development of the people by the end.
Yeah.
Some of these people that come in they're usually poor people. They usually
Yeah.
don't have a lot of money, and they come in and they're obviously rugged,
Yeah.
and they just start connecting to them deeper to the deeper selves. They
Yeah.
appreciate their parents more. It's
Yeah.
fun to watch.
Those shows are beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I wrote a piece about that show actually. Do you remember the guy? There's a guy. I think I've forgotten his name, and I don't know. It's not important. But the reason he struck me was because they put him on the edge of a lake in Patagonia somewhere,
Hmm.
and on his he gets there and he sets up his tent, and then he goes Patagonia and yells it, and you something about the way he did that, you're like, oh my, and then he pauses a little bit, and you can kind of feel the echoes coming back at him, and you're like, oh, this guy is about to get crushed.
Yeah,
And again, no judgment, because I mean, I don't know how long I would last, because it's not, that obviously they can all, whittle the sticks and eat the berries and do all that stuff, but it's
right.
it's the mind, isn't it? It's how well you can tolerate your own company, and then what arises after that, beyond that.
Right. And I think that again, that show for me and Survivor and others,
Yeah,
they're metaphors for the human condition. And
yeah, yeah,
so when
yeah,
I look at those things, and so again, we say, well, why would I put myself in situations? Like because that's who we are as humans. We love the
yeah,
challenge, and even putting ourselves where we feel alone. Because when we even in these bodies, I believe when we're in spirit, we're so connected that we don't know what it's like to feel alone. We're
yeah,
always there's always we always have that connection. Anytime we want it, we're instantly connected.
Yeah.
We come here and we feel alienated. We feel literally like you talked about aliens.
Yeah.
I remember being a kid when I was 4 or 5 years old, like, well, I don't like this place.
Yeah.
And even I could be in the house with my parents, my brothers, and I still felt alone.
Huh.
Because it's just, it's hard to even describe the feeling. But yeah,
Did that feeling stay with you?
it did. Yeah, for a very long time. Yeah.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
what 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 made it or what kind of alleviated it in the end, do you think?
Um, wow, that's my whole life. That's the whole arc of my life.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really kind of started going away when I realized, I was raised in the church and I was taught we're souls, but still
Yeah.
it was separate. When I started learning that we have soul groups, that we have teams, that we are multi-dimensional beings that are
Yeah.
actually, or it's not just we're multi-layered,
Yeah.
even. So all of that, and this has been in the last several years, and
Yeah.
really excited right after my daughter passed away, which was 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, feeling the connection that I still have with her, realizing that we're always connected in a certain way.
Yeah.
So, but it's through all these observations about life, all the things that your book's about,
Yeah.
these little things, and looking at video games and like, why do we play video games? My daughter and
Yeah.
I love to play video games, and I would think,
Yeah.
why? What's the deal with it? Well, we like the challenge,
Yeah, and
and
that and the journey. I mean, the best video games have an incredible heroic journey in them,
yeah,
don't they? Upper
yeah,
level, upper level, upper level. Fight your way through.
always, always
Yeah,
up a level, and
yeah,
every boss is harder than the last,
yeah,
and the thrill when if you beat a boss the first time you play the boss,
yeah,
that's a terrible game. You've
yeah.
got to play that, and it's got to feel like you're never going to beat it. You have to
Yes,
learn the moves, and you have to go back and forth, and you have to try it over and over again. You have to develop different skills because this jump requires this move. And then when you finally beat it, it's that thrill. So people that design games know this. So
yeah,
if you look at that from a higher perspective, if you look at this life as a simulation or a virtual reality,
yeah.
then it makes sense. All
It
the
does
stuff
make
that we
complete
go
sense.
through.
Yeah, I always say as well. When I talk to people who are feeling bad, I always say if it didn't feel like beep, it wouldn't be real. You know what I mean? Like if you could see your way through this, then you wouldn't actually be in this state.
Right.
If it didn't feel like there was absolutely no way out and you were completely stuck, then what would be the point of this word depression? Do you know what I mean? If it was something that we could just manage and da 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 da, but it's a real state, and you get there and you feel like you've got nothing, you've got no tools, you've got no way forward, you've got nothing.
Hmm.
And in a way, just to experience the reality of that is kind of a gift. I think it's very painful, but it's still a gift.
It is, and that's what I love about your odes, because there's some odes of things that are higher, and there's some odes of things like constipation.
Yeah,
Just a natural part of being human,
yeah,
and learning to appreciate the things, quote, good or bad.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. You said it.
So, in terms of what you want people to take away from the book, what do you think are the lessons? Again, I'm not going to probably do cold showers, and I don't like AC/DC, so
Yeah,
I'm not looking at it for like I'm going to do these particular things, right? But what do you
yeah.
want people to take away in general?
I think just what we've been talking about in terms of paying attention to your own life and to your own perceptions, like what you were saying about waking up in the morning and appreciating, I feel cozy in bed, like I feel good here. I mean, it's so easy. There's something in the brain that will immediately override that with, oh yeah, but you got to do this and that and get going and email this person, and oh Jesus, how am I going to get through the day? Da, 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 da. That kicks in so quick. So
Hmm.
how do you anticipate that? How do you sort of give it the swerve somehow into this beautiful organic field, which is always available to you, and is so rich. Um, I mean, I've got an ode to my dog's balls in there. My dog Sonny, and it's all about walking around with him, and he's a real handful of a dog, but learning to appreciate, like the weird little weeds on the curb and the old shoe that he's sniffing at, and the fact that I have to be hyper vigilant because he might get in a fight with another dog at any minute, etc., etc. We've all got things kind of inviting us into that state. So keeping yourself open to that, I think is the ticket. And I would really, I really hope that I can just elevate people's moods just a tick. You know what I mean? Just a notch with this. That I would be very happy if that was the case.
Yeah. Did you think of it as a mindfulness book when you wrote it?
No, I didn't actually. I thought about it as just a series of funny little exercises, um, and the larger kind of thing only came into focus when they were all together. You know, all
Hmm.
the Odes all started talking to each other, and then I kind of began to understand what it was all about. But as I'm writing them, I'm just trying to concentrate on the thing I'm writing about.
Yeah. So so you're trying to you said you want to elevate people's moods
Yeah,
by helping them, I guess, make these observations.
yeah.
Because I don't is it the particular observations or is it just the idea of learning to make observations?
It's yes, the latter, learning to make observations and learning to trust your own perceptions and your own language. I mean, that's one of the hardest things when you're helping people with writing, helping kind of beginners. They freeze like, I can't write, I can't do that I can't do that thing. I haven't got access to that language, that special. You know, there's this kind of illusion that there's something out there. Everybody knows how to do this other something, and you don't. You know, you are you know, you and I and everybody else, we're the leading experts in the fields of who we are. Nobody knows it like us. Nobody can describe it like us. Nobody can go as deep as we can. So go there. You know, I mean, you have a tremendous amount of original experience to communicate. So go for it, and avoid cliche, avoid kind of hidebound herd instinct language. You know, go for your own perceptions, your own words, your own style.
I love what you said there about you're the expert in yourself because
Yeah.
again, a lot of times people feel like, well, I don't have anything to say, and you know,
Right.
people even in my field with coaching with people, there's always this feeling like, well, I don't know enough, and I need to go
Yeah.
get this. I need to get this degree. I need to get this education.
Yeah.
We all can. This is my opinion. We can all talk to people.
Yes.
None of us says I don't know how to talk, but
Yes.
when it comes to writing, a lot of times I think people feel like, oh, I don't know how to write.
Yeah.
And there are all these rules around writing that, frankly, I ignore.
Yeah.
I've written a book. I'm writing a couple more books. What I love now is I can put them out, whether
Yeah.
anybody likes it or not. I'm not hiring an editor.
Right.
I'm going to put it on Amazon, and people, if there's a mistake in it or whatever, that's fine.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we all have a voice. We all have something to say.
Yeah, I've got an ode to small talk, which is it's basically about how the you know the kind of really insignificant seeming or on a verbal level interactions that you have with people in the street around the place, they can actually I wonder if I can connect this to what you were saying about soul groups and teams. Like there are people who we meet in the street who will just say something completely inconsequential to us. You know, have a nice day. You know, how about those Celtics, whatever it might be,
Hmm.
and somehow you feel utterly restored and refreshed. I mean, profoundly.
Hmm.
Not just like, oh, that was nice, that seemed like a nice person, but really like it gets to the core of you, like you recognize something in them. You might never see them again, probably don't, you know. But they're the, you know, these moments of connection. They're quite they're I mean they're quite mysterious in some ways.
Yeah, well, there are people that make outsized impacts on our life, and there are
Yeah,
people that we meet. It's interesting because I work with a guy that does a lot of past life work, and he goes, when you meet somebody and you immediately dislike them,
yeah,
it's probably because of a past life encounter,
yeah,
and at some level, you know who that person is. But
yeah,
there's
yeah,
also the opposite. There's that person that you meet that you have an immediate connection with, that
yeah,
you felt like you've known them forever.
yeah,
And again, doing these exercises, the odes, reading those, and starting to do your own observations. When we start to notice those little moments, I think they become more. I don't know if they happen more often or we just notice them more often, but these things we call synchronicities start to
yeah,
really pop into our lives.
yeah. My granddad used to say friendship is largely a matter of recognition. You know, just like I know this person and we're, you know, we're fine. Whether we've been fine before, I know we're going to be fine from now on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I'm going to take us down a bit of a rabbit hole, but there's a song I
Please.
love by Kenny Loggins called "Sweet Reunion."
Yeah.
And in the song, he's meeting the love of his life, and it's about him meeting, like, it's a romantic love. But
Yeah,
when I hear that song, I think about when my daughters were born, and he
yeah,
talks about how we've lived 1,000 lifetimes before, and
yeah,
and you're finally here walking into my life, and I think that's what it is. I think friendship, love, my children, they're when they, it's like, okay, here you are. I've been looking
yeah,
for you, and now here
yeah,
you are.
yeah. I'm gonna quote a band back at you. There's a band called the Pupils, and there's a line. It's just about knowing people, and there's a line. It's good to know I'll know you till the end. I mean,
Hmm.
you just about your friends and the people you love. That's just how you feel. You're gonna know them forever, beyond this life, of course, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think that's true. I mean, at least it's true from my perspective of looking at things.
Yeah,
And again, what I love about your odes is they encourage people to, again, I keep saying it, but we tend to overlook our lives. We tend
yeah,
to think that they're just mundane. We tend to only look
yeah,
for the highlights. We don't think about ode to brain farts, which
yeah,
was, I like that one too. That
yeah.
one jumped out at me.
Good. Yeah, I mean that's about well I try and classify the different types of brain fart. There's the brain fart of a technique where you suddenly find yourself very, very bad doing something that you have been quite good at for some reason, for whatever reason. There's a brain fart of memory, where you forget your friend's wife's name or the name of your favorite restaurant, whatever it is. And then there's the brain fart of being, which you actually forget who you are, what you're doing here, which mercifully in my case has been fairly brief, like little 2 sec. But my God, you feel it when it's like, Jesus, what? It's like you fall down a manhole, in
Hmm.
the cartoon. Like what am I doing here? And it fades. But actually, when I was in my least sort of together moment in my 20s, that was kind of what having a panic attack felt like. It felt like a brain fart amplified, to the edges of the universe. Like I've got no sense of why I'm here. Everything's being sort of pulled out of me. That was how it used to feel.
Yeah, yeah. That lack of understanding, again, who you are, why you're
Yeah,
here, and
yeah,
these exercises can help to anchor us.
yeah,
We when I teach something called positive intelligence, and we talk about getting back in the body. We do things called PQ reps,
yeah.
and they're little moments of mindfulness, where it could be a
PQ
tactile
reps.
thing. Yeah, PQ reps stands for positivity quotient. So
Right on.
you do little things like, rub, if you're having a panic attack, for example,
Yeah,
that unreal feeling when you feel like your head's going to explode and everything.
yeah, yeah,
If you can focus on something small, like rubbing your fingers together, or the feeling of yourself in your chair or something,
yeah, yeah,
it can bring you back in. It can anchor you back.
yeah,
And what I like about this is, like, there's always something that I can observe, whether it's what's going on with this character in a movie, or
yeah.
whether it's the brain fart. It's part of the human experience,
I mean,
and
it's
accepting
fun.
that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, Brian. As we're talking, I'm realizing that I actually that ode that is not complete ode to brain fast. I should have carried on. I should have gone into panic attacks with it. Do you know what I mean? That would have
Hmm.
that's where it wanted to go. So yeah, maybe I'll have to do that at some point.
Well, we've
Re
discussed a lot of the odes. What are some of your favorites that we haven't discussed?
I'm very there's one called Ode to Coming Round on the Bathroom Floor, which I really like because I used to. There was a time in my life when I was a night baker and I'd come in at 3 in the morning, and my son, who's 22 now, he was a baby then, so he'd often wake me up crying, and I'd jump out of bed, and then my wife would hear a great kind of thump. I'd be laid out on the bathroom floor, and fainting, as anybody who's fainted knows, is really an awful experience. I mean, it's
Hmm.
kind of like dying. I mean, you can feel everything sort of slipping and sliding, and then down you get, and then you black out. But coming round, I found, was rather beautiful. It was very leisurely. I was kind of astonished by, this is what we've been talking about, like the fingers and, rubbing your fingers, feeling yourself in your chair. I would
Hmm.
have that feeling like, oh my God, I am grounded. I'm earthed.
Hmm.
There's some kind of electrical thing happens, I think, when you faint, like your brain cuts out. And as those circuits kind of restore themselves and refresh themselves, I would think, oh my God, this floor is beautiful. Like the bathroom tile feels so cool against my cheek, and the light is so clear, and that this body feels great. And that it's kind of about feeling at home in the world, which is a brief. feeling,
Mhm.
but you know it when you have it, and it can be very sustaining.
Yeah, awesome. And another thing I would ask you about, I know you talk about Jesus a little bit in your book.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Jesus?
I love Jesus. He's a inspiring presence in my life. I was raised Catholic. I'm a fairly sort of collapsed Catholic. There's a lot of things about the church that I do not subscribe to at all, but I love the fact that it's there. I go to mass when I can, and I get a lot out of the New Testament. I get a lot out of the Gospels, and I get a
Mhm.
tremendous amount out of the words of Jesus. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else about you you'd like to say?
About Jesus.
Yeah.
Um, I think I'm not. I wish I've tried to write an ode to praying, um, and I've been unable to because I'm not
Hmm.
actually very good at praying.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't mean praying for stuff. I mean praying in the sense of aligning yourself, you know,
Yeah.
with the higher thing. And I wish, as much as I write about this stuff, there's kind of a lack of it in my life in terms of a practice. So that's what I thought of when you asked me that question.
Interesting. But you wrote an ode to sleeping Jesus, right?
Sleeping Jesus, yeah. I got very interested in the moment. There's only one moment in the Gospels where he falls asleep, which is on the boat in the Sea of Galilee during the storm,
Right.
and the disciples are freaking out, and Jesus is asleep in the
Hmm.
back,
Hmm.
um, and they wake him up, and you can imagine him sort of coming out of it a little bit sort of groggily, perhaps a tiny bit irritated, like, well, why'd you wake me? Because it's a beautiful idea that he can be, he gets a bit of rest, because he's a busy he's a busy guy. He's got
Right.
a lot to do, so you shouldn't really disturb him when he's getting his 40 winks. But they do disturb him, and of course he rises and he quiets the storm. But I just love that idea that there is this that I've got this image of him sort of curled up almost like a little pearl or something at the heart of things, connected to the ocean, to the root of the ocean, not to the surface turbulence, which is what the disciples are experiencing. And by
Hmm.
going to him, that's how they settle it down. So he settles it down, but it's their appeal to him that ends up with the thing being, it's them going beneath the surface basically that that
Yeah.
that settles the situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful observation, and there's so much again in these stories, whether we take them literally or we take them as metaphor.
Yep.
Because again, they're in the same circumstances, they're literally in the same boat.
Yeah.
Jesus is like, I'm sleeping,
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
these guys are freaking out.
Yeah.
So it's an
Yeah.
example of what the type of peace that we can all hopefully try to achieve. And I think
Exactly.
again, that's what we're talking about here. It's like even though in that story he calms the sea, it's really more about that internal piece. I think that
I
we
think so.
we because we can't control our circumstances. We're going to go through crap. That's again. I was talking to someone yesterday, and I say it all the time. The pain, the turmoil, the things we go through here, they're not a bug. They're a feature.
Yeah.
I
Right.
think we come here to experience that, and I've tried to make the case for that as we've talked about. Some of
Yeah.
these things that humans do with the
Yeah.
crazy things that we do. I was watching someone zip lining the other day over Dubai,
Yeah.
and I posted on my Facebook page. Everybody's like, "Nope, nope,"
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
like, "No, I would never do that." But
But for that
um,
guy,
I saw a story, and this is another because this is why I connect so much with the book because this is the way my mind works too. There was a guy that was he was going up Mount Everest, and he encountered a guy who had gotten in trouble and
yeah.
was would have died, and he rescued that guy and he brought him down. Okay, that's the story. But I'm thinking, okay, why were they on Mount Everest, right? Because you don't have to be there,
Right. 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 Nobody made this guy climb Mount Everest.
right? So it's like this is what humans do.
Yeah.
We crave these things, and
Yeah.
what you're I think telling us to do is like embrace it all. You know,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
don't try to bypass things. Don't Don't think that this thing is a little thing, and embrace it all, observe it all. It's a short ride. It's a relatively short ride.
It is a short ride. I mean, what you know, when I dedicate this book to my wife and my son and the writers that I work with, and also my therapist, Dr. Cottle, who I saw him for about 10 years, you know, and he really helped me. And one of the things he would say, like, you know, when I was moaning on about, you know, this mood or that mood or these sensations or that sensations, now and again, he'd just look at me and he'd go, well, I mean, you're an artist, you're a writer. What do you expect? Like, this is it. This is what happens when you raise your sensitivity or to a certain level, which is where you should be to be alive. Um,
Wow,
you know,
that's a brilliant
odes,
observation.
isn't it nice? It's so simple, but I found it so helpful. I mean, Saint Irenaeus, the Catholic saint, he wasn't Catholic, but you know, he's a saint. Um, he said the glory of God is a man fully alive. And that's
Mm,
I think that's the and I should say like I hope it doesn't sound like I'm preaching because I fall short of all of these things many times a day and have had you know long periods where I was failing to embrace all the things we've been talking about
hmm
but I do but when I'm on my game I you know when my system is on its game I think that's the ticket.
I think that's brilliant what your therapist said to you. I was talking with a friend yesterday who has had a brain injury, and you know they think and operate differently because of that.
Yeah,
And we're looking at going on to maybe medication for it or something. And I'm like, but is it affecting how you function in the world? Is it preventing you from getting things done?
yeah,
Is it and they're like, well, no, but it makes me act differently and work differently. And I'm like, but it also makes you great at what you do.
yeah,
So you have to be careful with trying to make
yeah,
everybody like everybody else.
exactly.
And you made it. I love what you said. It gave me goosebumps about. You said you're an artist. You've got a level of sensitivity.
Yeah,
Well, the world is crazy.
yeah,
So people that if we do have a higher level of sensitivity, we're going to feel pain. There's a reason
oh
why
yeah,
artists feel pain. And you know, you could not feel pain. You could walk around the world clueless. You could walk around
yeah,
the world not caring
yeah.
and not
Or you can drink or drug or do whatever it is. I mean, there's ways of not doing it for sure.
right, right. So what I think what we're saying is, okay, embrace it all. And
Yeah,
I used to suffer from seasonal affective disorder. I live in Ohio, and it gets really gloomy here in the winter.
yeah.
And I mentioned earlier, I hate the cold, and I live in a place where it's cold, you know, 6 months out of the year.
These cold. It's never going to take this cold shower thing. I can tell. It's never. It's never.
I hate the cold. So, you know, it's really hot right now. People are like complaining about the heat. I'm like, I will never complain about the heat.
Yeah,
But I got a sad light and I put it on my desk, and it helped. And I used it for a couple of years. And then one year I was like, you know what? I'm just going to accept the fact in the winter that this is the way I feel.
yeah,
I have lower energy. I sleep in a little bit later. I typically go to bed earlier.
yeah,
I'm like, but I looked around. I'm like, that's what nature does.
yeah, yeah.
Animals in nature don't fight winter; they hibernate.
Yeah, but also I mean, what you're doing there, Brian, just by sort of explaining the condition to yourself, you know, in that like by kind of itemizing those, that's like a little ode that you've written just there. Do you know what I mean? Like it helps once if you sat down and wrote, yeah, I have less energy, I need this, I need that. These are the things that happen to me under these, you know, under these conditions.
Hmm
Somehow that's a way of conquering the condition in
Yeah.
a funny way, right?
No, a couple of years after, one of my friends said that she had seasonal affective disorder, and I sent her my light. I said, I don't use it anymore,
Yeah,
because I'm like, this is a temporary thing.
yeah,
I know why it is. I know
yeah,
it's because it's December. I
yeah.
know it's going to go away in March or April.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to embrace it. And then
And
when you stop fighting it, it doesn't hurt.
yeah, but also, you know, part of the condition of depression and grief, I'm sure I haven't had that much experience with it, is this like what we were talking about at the beginning, this the sense that time has stopped. I mean, you can't project forward at all, right?
Right, exactly.
So you have to kind of you have to recognize that like this is part of it. You know,
Mhm.
this is not necessarily the case, but it is definitely the case now, and it kind of endure that or find a way to manage it, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I love, like I said, I was reading about, you said this is to my 25-year-old self, because that's an
Yeah,
exercise that we do sometimes. It's like we go back and
yeah,
we talk to our younger selves.
yeah,
And you putting this out there, at the age that you are now, and having had this experience, these experiences,
yeah.
hopefully it'll give someone else hope that
I
says,
hope
yeah,
so.
it's going to be okay. And I know there's a big campaign. What is it? It gets easier,
Yeah.
for
Yes.
people that are suffering. It's like,
Right.
and that's true. Life, it gets easier and it gets harder, because life is always, it's like this. That's
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. But whatever I mean, one thing I say to people is if it's acute, the state that you're in, if it's acute, then you know it's going to change because nothing stays acute. Nature is incapable of maintaining a state of acuteness for very long. So if
Yeah.
you're acutely depressed, that's going to pass fairly soon, right?
Yeah, that's a great point too. Yeah. So yeah, these things, they come and they go.
Yeah.
And again, I think the book is great because it's not like Man's Search for Meaning it's kind of hard to get to. I mean, Viktor Frankl is a very, it's kind of hard to understand. This is a
Yeah.
book that anybody can read, pick up, and it's lighthearted, but it's also extremely deep if you take the message of it.
I so appreciate you saying this, Brian.
Yeah, and really, really easy to read. And I think that's you have a thing where you like your books being compact. Is that true?
Yes, yes. I'm very pleased. But people have different ways of reading now, but I'm a books guy. I'm an analog dude, and I love. So this is it's little and it fit and compact and it fits into your back pocket, and I love the thought that people can take it with them around the place and have pop into it now and again and have a little read. And it's just it's kind of available in that physical sense. It made me very happy when I opened the box. I was like, oh yeah, because I was anticipating a big like clunky hardcover like something somebody gives you for Christmas that you never read, and
Hmm.
but this it feels like a little tool, almost toolkit perhaps.
Yeah, I think so. And it's interesting because most books that are bought are never read. I forgot what percentage of the actual book gets read, but it's a very
Yeah,
small percentage. People buy
yeah,
books and they have intentions to read them, but they're hard. Frankly, they're hard to get through, and
yeah,
sometimes it takes me a long time to get through a book.
yeah,
But when you have little bite-sized things, you can pick it up and you can read it for 5 minutes,
yeah,
and
yeah,
finish an ode.
yeah,
That you feel a sense of accomplishment and you come back to it.
yeah.
If I
And
pick
it's
up a
also
book and it takes me, 30 minutes to read a chapter, I'm like, I'm
right.
probably not going
I'm
to
a, I'm a
finish it.
slow reader. I'm a very slow reader. I have to keep going back and checking. Yeah, it's all. I mean, it could also, if it ends up being a bathroom book, that's a noble destiny for me. I think that's fantastic.
I don't, I think it would be great it'd be a great bathroom book.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
because the odes, they do stand alone. There's some themes that kind of come together,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's accessible. And I think we do need that. It's great to have academic stuff. That's all wonderful too. But some of us struggle to get through those, and some of us never get through them. We buy them and intend to, but we never do. I think this is a book that people will finish.
right. Thank you, Brian.
So, I know we talked about a lot of your odes. Are there any other ones that you want to say before we wrap up?
There's well, kind of one of the bigger ones is called Ode to the Right Art at the Right Time, and this
Yes.
this is
Yeah.
very specific to me, and I think this is kind of what we've been getting at. I mean, I'm just writing completely out of my own, quite idiosyncratic experience in a way. So I went to boarding when I was 8. I went to boys boarding school, all boys boarding school, Catholic boarding
Hmm.
school, in England. And I come from a very privileged background, but it was a pretty harsh environment. And I write about that. I write about the feeling of being homesick. It's a very, there's a kind of emerging literature about what being sent away to boarding school does to people, and specifically in England, there's a whole class of men who have emerged from this experience who often end up being politicians. And what it can, I think it encourages you to build a kind of artificial self as a defense.
Hmm.
And then if you're lucky, life will smash that artificial self and you'll be forced to become who you are,
Hmm.
which is what happened to me. But the smashing can be very painful.
Right.
Nonetheless, anyway, back to the ode. So it's about me at boarding school, and my mum. giving me Pink Floyd's album The Wall,
Oh
and
yeah, I wanted
and
to
me
ask you about that.
and me finding in that album just a kind of incredible explanation of who I was, of what was happening, of what it means to be English, of what it meant to have these psychotic, abusive teachers surrounded by frightened little boys who were all being mean to each other. It completely saved my bacon.
Wow.
So the odeness of that, if you like, is, what is it for you? What was the moment where a record or a book or a movie came to your rescue and kind of matched your circumstances in that way?
Yeah, I'm glad I asked you that last question because The Wall, it to me is like a phenomenal album. It's
Oh,
just
good. So
the
we connect on that, not on AC/DC, but on
the
Pink Floyd.
wall the wall came out when I was in college. I think it was my second or third year in college, and this was back when we had albums, and so we got
Yeah,
that album. We just played it over and over and over, and I
yeah,
don't know why, because I didn't really understand the story of it at the time,
yeah,
until the movie came out.
yeah,
And but I loved the songs individually, but
yeah,
then when the movie comes out, you see the arc of the guy's life, and I'm
yeah.
like, that might be the single best album that's ever been put out.
I agree. I totally agree. And I've never stopped listening to it, and it never ceases to, give me the goods. It's
Yeah.
uh, it's a masterpiece.
It's so, and for people that don't know what we're geeking out about, it's about this building up of this artificial personality. This
Yeah,
little boy who is in a frightened world. He's got an overprotective mother, but the rest of the
yeah,
world is like, coming at him. And she's
yeah,
like, "You've got to build this wall. You've got to protect yourself."
yeah, yeah,
And it ends up he find at the end that he's built this wall and he realizes he's basically put himself in jail, that he can't be
yeah. He's
himself anymore.
he's alone behind the wall. So
Yeah.
then, you get the chant at the end of the album, tear down the wall, tear down the wall. And everybody's got their own wall, their own version of it, their own bricks, what they've done, right?
I think we all do. I think we all do. We all come in this world, and we come in pure, like I
Yeah,
talked about. We come from spirit. We come in pure, but we get
yeah,
bogged down by the way of the world, and they tell us, "You've got to build this wall.
yeah.
You've got to play this part. You've got to play this role."
Oh,
And we're
I'm
all
so I'm
just,
so happy talking about this, Brian. I'm this bloody vibrating talking about
yeah. But we
this.
all just want to be ourselves.
Yeah,
We want to be ourselves, and it takes until we get, in our later years. And yeah, it was a sentence from the tear down the wall. It's like you have to tear down the wall, but it was also
yeah,
freeing.
yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. And yeah, I mean, and it's an ongoing process as well. I think the wall is constantly attempting
Always.
to, attempting to rebuild itself, and we constantly have to smash it down.
Yeah,
Um,
always people are always trying to put us back in the box.
yeah, yeah,
People like
that's
to
it.
have you defined. They want to know who you are, and you do something that, well, that's out of character for you. That's
Yeah,
not the way you're supposed to be.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Well, that is a fantastic way to end, James. I've really enjoyed our time together. Remind
Please
people
do,
of the
Brian.
name of your book and where they can get it.
Get me through the next 5 minutes. Odes to Being Alive. You can get it all, Amazon, all good bookstores. But get it at your local bookstore if you can, please. Support your local bookstore. But yeah, that's it, Brian. I've had such a great time this morning. What a beautiful conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, have a good day.
You too.